Alright, so we're gonna try this video, and hopefully this camera don't start buzzing again, because this thing's about on its last leg. I got another camera on order. You know, I got one and it should be on the way, but you know, until then we've got to put up with this camera. My phone, the last video I did of that Westinghouse radio, you know, my phone has such bad audio. I've been trying to use a regular camera, and this is the only one I have left that even halfway works. Before we get started on this, this video is going to be how to rebuild Bakelite block condensers or Bakelite block capacitors in Philco radios from the 30s and 40s. I believe they had these into the 40s, mainly pre-war 40s, so early 40s. Anyway, there are special tools that you can buy that make this job a lot easier, and these are it. And these are sold by a guy named Steve Davis. He sells these on eBay. He sells them in a set, and you may be able to buy these individually. I'm not real sure. He sent a set in, and but I actually already had my own set that was sent to me by a viewer, and big thank you to Steve and the viewer. These have made my job a lot easier of rebuilding these Bakelite blocks. This is Steve's information here. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. Steve also makes reproduction Dogbone resistors. He does a very good job at these. He always gives you plenty of leads, and he makes these in sets for different radios, and he also will custom make them to whatever value you need. So you can contact Steve. There's his phone number, and also on his Philco radio website. Also on eBay, I'll post a link in the description. I think my battery is about to die. These batteries in this camera haven't been used in so long that they probably aren't functioning. Alright, so we're using the new camera now. So anyway, let's get into the video with rebuilding these Bakelite blocks. I'm going to show you how to do one. They're not all going to be this way. They're all done a little bit differently. There's even some that have resistors in them, some that have just capacitor, like one capacitor, and some may have a double capacitor. Most of the time they're bypass capacitors, or coupling capacitors. Just depends on where in the radio it's at. A lot of them, you know, this will be your grounding point to the chassis. You'll have one here and one here if it's a double one, or one here, and like this one here, I don't think there's one in there. I think this is just a tie point, but I can't be sure on that. It may be, yeah, I think this one actually is, because they left this one in the circuit. So this is a double one here, for example, and these capacitors have a number on them, if you can see that on the side there. And if you don't have a schematic, I'll leave a link in the description below, but their Philco radio has these numbers, a lot of the numbers, maybe not all of them. This one is 49889. E is in Edward, or E is in Echo. So you will use that number, and they'll have that number on there, and it'll tell you the value of it. But most of the time the schematic has it listed, so you should be able to do that. But with this one, let's see if I can show you. This capacitor is not on there. It's not on the schematic, and it's not on the parts list either. Let's see if I can find that. I think I actually drew it in there, but this is the sort of, layout of the radio, and then you'll see the knobs are here, and there's nothing in here. This is the sort of, flat box can capacitor right there, and then right here you've got one, and there's nothing there. So it's not on the schematic either. When you actually look at the schematic itself, it's not on there either. So in that case, that's where the number is going to come in handy for you. If you have the same number in the radio, then it'll give you an idea. Like if these two are the same number, then you can pretty much bet that it's probably going to be the same. But that reference on Philco radio is a invaluable resource. As far as doing these, if you have one that's not on the schematic, or you don't have a schematic. Okay, so looking on our diagram, I'm trying to show this in the easiest way I can for the beginner. You can find these on a schematic by going through the circuits and find it circuit wise on the schematic. But since this radio has a diagram in its schematic, I'm going to show you the easiest way to find it is just to find it physically on the schematic or the diagram here. And this is listed as number 31 because that would be here. So this one actually has a resistor and a capacitor inside of it. So we need to find out which connection has the resistor and which one has the capacitor. Okay, so it's pretty easy to tell where a resistor and capacitor are in this circuit, because looking at number 31 on our schematic here, this is our capacitor, this is our resistor, and these arrows point to resistor and capacitor being in that Bakelite block. So we can tell our capacitor goes to ground. That's a ground symbol. And the other side of it is connected in series with the resistor and goes up to our grid on this tube here, which is a number 24, which is located here. And we know that because we have a wire running from this lug over to the tube socket. So our resistor and capacitor are going to be connected here, and the capacitor is going to go to ground, which they have here, which they had this wrong. So anyway, that's going to ground, and our resistor is going to go from here to here. So they had this on the wrong spot. So let me explain why that was wrong. It's supposed to be connected, the capacitor is supposed to be connected to this lug, and it was connected to this lug. So this wire here goes down to this big wire wound resistor here, which is part number 5125. You can see that. So looking on our diagram here, the capacitor was attached to that point there, which goes down here and connects to E, which is E on number 40. Number 40 is our resistor, which is 5125. So that tells us that that was connected to the wrong side of that resistor. According to the schematic here, it's supposed to be connected to the tube side of the resistor, which is on the other side, which is this lug. That's the tube side. So this should have been connected over here. They did that wrong. So not only was it wrong, it's wrong to do it this way. you should always take this out and do what we're about to do, and take this screw out and pull this resistor block out and gut the inside of it. Take the old components out and put your new components inside here so you don't see them, and you'll never know it's been restuffed, and it'll have new electronic components in it. The old component won't be in the circuit to short out. If it's a capacitor, it will not short or leak, and you'll have new components in there and it'll look original. You can tack the components on top here if you don't want to put it inside of here, but you've got to take this off to get in there to get the old components out. You might as well put the new components inside where you don't see them, but that's up to you. So anyway, let's get this out of here and I'll show you what I'm talking about, and I'll show you what those tools were for at the beginning of the video that I showed you. Okay, we're gonna prop you all up on a box I got over here. This is just a quarter drive screw here. You just take these out. You just take the screw out. Be careful, there's going to be a what I call a bite washer or a grounding type washer on the bottom of this. So don't let it fall out. Sometimes it'll stick to the chassis and sometimes it won't. This one looks like it wants to stick to the chassis. Yeah, it's stuck to the chassis. I don't know if you can see that. There's a washer there. That one's stuck to the chassis, so we'll leave it be. Doesn't fall out, it's fine, but this one comes right out. And as you can see on the bottom, it's got that black tar. And that's when your little pusher tool that I've got here comes in handy. What you want to do is you want to heat this Bakelite block up with a heat gun. I've got a small one that I use for heat shrink. It's like a heat shrink type of heat gun. I'll show you that. It's just one that Radio Shack sold. I got it when they were closing. I think I got this for like $5. And what I do is I take this little heat shield off, because this is for heat shrink. If you're heat shrinking wires or something like that, that's a deflector shield for it. And I just use this and heat that up. Heat that Bakelite block up until that tar becomes shiny. Let's see if I got you. Let me turn that light on up here. I'll make it a little easier to see. So what we want to do is we want to heat this up. And we're going to heat that up. Now you can heat it up like directly onto the tar like that. But you're going to want to heat that Bakelite block up around so you can get it hot, so it'll turn loose from the Bakelite block so it don't stick. So you can see it starting to turn shiny color. That's a good sign. That's what you want. You want to heat it up and get it sort of to a semi-solid state. You just move your heat iron around, or your heat gun around to different sides so you can heat it up. Alright, so you want it pretty hot, and there's kind of a trick. You got to get this thing out without burning your hand on here too. So you're just gonna stick your little pusher tool through one of these holes. I use the center one most of the time because it's gonna kind of push it out evenly, and see, it just pops it right out. So, and there's your old cap, and your resistor should be up in here. Now this stuff is messy, so You know, don't get it around your clothes or anything like that, because it's gonna really get it stuck. I mean, it's gonna get into your clothes and it'll get really stuck to you, and you usually can't get it out. So, you know. So anyway, that's how you get the tar out. Okay, so the second thing we want to do, we want to clean this, clean these holes out, and you know what it is. These holes have these wires that come through. I don't know if you can see that or not. These holes have these wires that come through, and you want to clean these wires out. Now, sometimes these wires come out with the resistor or the capacitor or whatever it's got in there, and sometimes they don't. But this ream tool, this is included in the kit, is basically a little small drill bit that you use to kind of just twist it and clean it out. I don't always use this thing. I find it easier just to take a soldering iron, heat that up, and then just pull these out. And this particular tool, I think the drill bit's a little bit, you can change these drill bits out. It's got an Allen head there. If you need to change it out to a smaller one, you can get a little bit smaller one. I think this one's a little bit too big for these holes, but the idea is to take it, if I can show it, hopefully you can see that. You take them, put them in the holes, and you can clean the wire out of them. That's what that's for. So, you know, but like I said, I find it easier. You can either take this reamer tool and poke it through until the wire breaks off, which that one's already has. That one's already come out. And you can take that, just poke at it until you rip that wire out, so it's not there anymore. See, I took it out, right out. And you know, you can clean this out if you want to. It's not really too big of a deal. You know, I just get the big chunks out. Just take this tool and kind of go around and clean out the inside of it and get the rest of that tar out. So anyway, so what you're going to want to do now, when you get all this cleaned out to wherever you want it, you're going to want to put your resistor and capacitor. Now most of these are just capacitors, so you won't have to worry about a resistor, but in this one we've got a, I believe it's a 200 ohm resistor that's in here. And so you're going to want to put the appropriate component in there. Yeah, we got a 250 ohm resistor in this block. Now what I'm going to do, I double checked the value of this capacitor. The original capacitor that was in here was a 0.09 microfarad capacitor. They've used a 0.1, which is fine. I mean, you know, there's hardly any difference, and these values are not really all that critical. But I'm going to desolder this. I'm going to desolder this cap here and clean this up here a little bit and put this up under here. And then I'm going to get our resistor that we're going to put in there, which will probably be a 220, because I believe, off the top of my head, I believe that's the closest value, maybe a 270 or something like that. Okay, so there for a minute I was wondering if there was actually a resistor in here, and there was. I went back and verified the part number. I wanted to make sure that there was actually a resistor in here, and something hadn't changed, because this schematic that I've got has a different, I mean, it's a little bit different. There are some parts that were changed on this radio, so this may be an earlier or later model than when that schematic was printed. They may have made some revisions or whatever. So I wanted to make sure, and there, sure enough, there is a resistor in here. This is the resistor in that blob, and this was the capacitor. So there was a resistor in there, so we're gonna wire that up. There's one of the little small wires, if you can see that. So we're going to put that in there. But yeah, I just wanted to double check and make sure there was actually a resistor in there before I put one in there and didn't need one. Alright, so restuffing this thing, you want to pay close attention. I don't know if these leads on this capacitor that they had in here are going to be long enough to reach where they're supposed to go. But you really don't need too long a lead, so I may be able to stretch these out and make this work because they cut this thing down pretty low. I believe we can get this, but you want to make sure that you're going to orientate everything in the correct way, so it's going to be in the circuit the correct way. Now basically on this one, we're just going to put this capacitor from this hole to the top hole. This is the ground hole closest to your screw, and this would be your other hole where it goes to the tube on this particular one. This is kind of a general video, so you know your layout may be different. You may have 2 capacitors in yours, you may have 1 capacitor in yours, but you need to refer to the schematic or how it was wired up originally so you know how it goes. But this is how mine goes. So basically you want to poke these through the hole, and ordinarily you'd want to wrap them around these little, I don't know if you can see them, those little stubs right there. You want to wrap them around. But on this one I think the leads are too short, so I'm probably going to have to get a good mechanical connection, I'm probably going to have to use another capacitor because these legs just aren't quite long enough. Okay, so now we got our resistor and capacitor put in place. Got our resistor running from this center one over here. Sorry, I got tar all over myself. And then got our resistor going from here to the center lug, and then the capacitor going from this lug over to ground, which is the way it is on the schematic. And I wrap my leads around the little stubs there, and you want to solder them, and then I'll trim off my leads. Alright, now we got our new parts installed. And if you can see that, there's a resistor down in there, and then we got our big old honking capacitor in there. And that's really about it. You put your screw back in, make sure all your wires are still attached, and you know, you put your screw back in there. It looks like this, I had to resolder this wire. It looks like it wants to hang up a little bit, but basically you just put your screw back in there, make sure your ground washer is still in there, which mine is stuck to the chassis, so it still is. Just put your screw back in there and you're pretty much done. And that is basically how you rebuild a Bakelite block capacitor. It's not very complicated. It just takes a little work, and you get a little bit gooey on your fingers and all that, but it's not too bad. So, and if you're doing these here, which are the across the line capacitor, usually your power cord hooks to them. You know, basically these are terminal strips with parts built inside the block part of it. And so when you gut them, you're basically, you know, you're just restuffing them, but you use them as a terminal strip. When you're doing these, though, the ones that come off the power line, you'll need to use some safety capacitors. I'll show you some for reference. They're usually these square type capacitors, and what those do is if there's a short, they'll fail. Instead of shorting, they won't short, they'll fail open, so you don't risk burning up your power transformer or anything in line with your incoming power wires. If you have a short, yeah, it could short out and short your transformer out, and cause catastrophic failure. If you blow a power transformer on one of these, you might as well trash the radio. So that's my video on rebuilding a Bakelite block capacitor. Be sure to check out Steve Davis for these great tools and these those reproduction Dogbone resistors. Of course, I've laid them down. I can't find them, but check them out. He'll make any value you want, you know, as far as resistors go. Send him an email and he'll make them up for you and ship them out to you. And he's usually pretty good about shipping stuff out pretty fast. You know, check him out. He's on philcoradio.com also, and eBay. He sells on eBay too. So I'll try to leave links in the description so you can find all that stuff, and I'll try to leave links in the description for information on doing this repair. Thank y'all for watching.